Hello guys, welcome to Houdini Made Simple. In this video, I'll be covering the basics of animation. You will learn how to animate parameters, transform objects, basic expression, and how to control the timing using the animation editor. So let's dive in. Okay guys, so we just finished on the last video creating the lights and also some materials for the asteroids. In this lesson, I'm going to be working on creating some basic animation. So we're going to go back to the object level, going back to the asteroids, and basically what we are looking to do now is just create like a basic animation when the asteroids, they're moving kind of in this direction. Kind of like going into the earth. So super simple, but it's gonna allow us to work on the basic of the animation. So if you never animate anything in Houdini, this should be a good starting point. Okay guys, so let's start focusing on the basic of animation within Houdini. We're gonna go back to the sphere, hit spacebar and G just to focus on the sphere. And we're gonna create some transformation, but in this case with animation. So I'm gonna hit tab, create a transform node and connect this to the sphere. So let's say I want to move this object from left to right. This should be on the x-axis, and I want to move it 10 meters to the right. We can see the 10 here on the viewport, so I just want to translate that sphere to the right. So in order to move this sphere over time, we need to create keyframes on the transform. So we're gonna move in the timeline to the first frame all the way to the left. And in order to transform this object to the right, this is the x-axis, we're gonna hit Alt left click here on the translate. And as you can see, now this is looking green. So this means that we just create a keyframe. So basically a keyframe in Houdini is a point in time where you set a specific value for an attribute or a parameter. And then Houdini is just going to interpolate between these values over time. So I'm going to move through the timeline, let's say to frame 72, that's going to be 3 seconds. And I'm just going to tell Houdini that I want this sphere to be 10 meters to the right on the frame 72. So we're just going to type 10, hit enter, and as you can see, the sphere translate 10 meters to the right. We just gonna have to click left click holding the Alt, and now we have 2 keyframes as you can see in green on the timeline, and Houdini is animating in between. So now we can hit play and see the animation on the timeline, but this is going too fast, so we need to turn on real-time toggle so it doesn't go as fast as possible and stick to real-time playback. So now again we can hit play, and now we can see the real speed that this object is moving left to right. So basically you are telling to Houdini, hey, at this frame I want this value, and then on another frame I want this value. And then Houdini is just gonna animate in between. This is called interpolation, and it's basically how Houdini fills in the gaps between keyframes to create smooth animation. So if we move through the timeline, we can see on the translate that the value is changing between 0 and 10. And we don't need to specify them. Houdini is just creating those values, making sure that we have smooth transition between those. Okay guys, so before we go into how to control the interpolation, let's talk about basic parameters within the timeline. So first thing, the real-time toggle. It's important to usually have this on because I don't want to play the timeline faster than real time. Okay, sometimes, especially when the scene is light, if you hit play, it might be too fast. So I always want to limit the playback speed, setting the real-time toggle on. Here on the left we have play, stop, or we can go to the first or last frame, but the most important setting is going to be here on the global animation option. So we're going to click over here. Let's move this to the center. So over here you can set up the FPS, the frames per second of your project. In this case 24 is okay. Then we have the frame range of the project. In this case I'm working from 1 to 240, as you can see on the timeline, but I want to make it a bit shorter, so I'm gonna go and set up 72. Usually projects you work between 24 and 30 FPS. In this case, if we have 72 frames and 24 FPS, we're gonna have a total of 3 seconds scene. Once we finish setting everything up, we can hit apply, close, and now we have the time frame from the first frame to 72, where we can see the ball moving left to right. So in order to control the animation curve, to control the interpolation that is happening in between these two keyframes, we're gonna go and hit over the transform, holding the shift key with just left click, and it's gonna open the animation editor. We can use the scroll to move on the animation editor. We can also hit the F key to focus on the curve. And now, as you can see, we have here the translate X, and we have this curve over here. We can select both keyframes and hit again the F key on the keyboard, and it's gonna kind of frame this into the animation editor. So there are a lot of things you can control in the animation editor. In this case, we're just gonna focus on how to control the curve and understanding the types of function that you can use in order to change the behavior between these frames. So now we have these two handles, and we have this curve that is starting slow, then kind of going to a regular speed, and then slowing down again before getting to the last keyframe. So here you can see that on the viewport that start kind of slow and then kind of ramps up the speed and then slow down at the end. So that could be something you want, but in this case, especially for the rocks, we want something more linear. So the thing you can do is you can try to move these handles to adjust the initial speed and how it's gonna get to the end, and try to make this as straight as possible to have a linear behavior. So now it's gonna start faster. It's gonna try to keep the same speed from the first frame to the last frame, but in this case there are easier ways to do that. So we can select both frames, go over here to the function, and instead of Bezier we can select linear. This is gonna create a linear interpolation between the two keyframes, and if we go and select the first keyframe, you can see that it says frame 1 value 0. And if we select the other keyframe, it says 72 on the frame and 10 on the value. And we can move the keyframe here on the graph, or switch the value here on the bottom. In this case, if we set the value to 5, we can see how now the ball is moving only 5 meters to the right. And we can get this back to 10. And also we can change the frame if we want to go faster. So now it's taking 2 seconds to get to 10 meters to the right instead of the 3 seconds. I want to get this back to 72. And you can also, instead of changing the values on the bottom part, just select the keyframe and you can move them in the curve. So that's going to change the frame and the value as you move the keyframe. So this is a basic of how to control the interpolation using the animation editor. You also have the option to select with the middle mouse button and move this keyframe on the timeline. So now it's going to start moving here on the 26th frame. Or if you want, you can select with middle mouse and hit the delete key if you want to just delete that keyframe. At the same time, if you want to break the animation at all, you can hold Ctrl Shift and left click, and this is gonna break that animation. So another way to animate the translation here on the object could be using expressions instead of keyframes. So we can use common expression, which is $F for frame, and we hit enter. This is gonna basically take the value of the frame, in this case 1, and it's gonna match this to the value, in this case, of the x-axis. So if we go to frame 10, now the sphere is gonna be 10 meters to the right. So if we keep going, it's gonna be out of the viewport, so we can go back here and see the whole animation. So let's say this is going too fast, so I don't want this to travel that much to the right. So we can go back into this closer range and then start using math on the expression. So we can divide this, let's say 24, and now the ball is gonna be moving to the right, but it's gonna be moving way slower than before. And of course, we can animate any of these values. So let's break this animation holding Ctrl, Shift and left click. Let's get this back to 0. And now we can play with the scale of the ball. So we can go $F, and if we hit play, this is gonna match the size to the frame. And as you can see, this is like going way too big. So we can divide the $F expression or multiply by something smaller than 1. In this case, we can go 0.2. And now we can see how the sphere, how the ball is growing frame by frame, but in a much slower pace. So now going back to the asteroids, I want to move all these rocks all together from left to right. Here on the left we have the camera, so I want the rocks moving away from the camera, kind of moving into the earth. So we can create a transform after the points from volume, but I'm just gonna do it here after the copy to points. It's gonna be the same in this case, so we're just gonna create a transform, connect over here, and we want to move this on the Z-axis. Remember, if you want to create a keyframe, we just hold Alt and left click. If we need to create keyframe all together in all the 3 axes, we can just hold Alt and left click on the translate. In this case, I only need the Z-axis, so I'm just gonna click over here. And then we're gonna start moving this. We're gonna move the timeline, frame 72, and let's move this 1 meter. And still yellow, so I need this to go green. So I'm gonna hold Alt, left click, and now we have the rocks moving kind of slow motion away from the camera. So now we're gonna hold Shift, left click to open the animation editor. We're gonna center on this curve, and we're gonna go here and select linear. So we have the same speed. I want kind of slow but constant speed through the whole shot. So I'm gonna hit play. This should move super slow. In this case, I feel it's moving a bit fast for my taste. So I'm gonna go back, and instead of 1, I'm gonna set this to 0.4. So it moves really slow. So something like this is the timing I was going for. So once I'm happy with the result, I'm gonna create a flipbook so I can preview the final result. So a flipbook is basically a preview. So we're gonna go here on the down left side, right click and select flipbook with new settings. Once we are here, we have a few things to pay attention. The frame range is gonna be important. In this case, we have an expression, the start from to the end. This is okay. We want the whole timeline. On the output files, we want to send this to the mplay, which is a Houdini built-in tool to view images and review flipbooks. And then over here on size, we want to match the ratio of the camera. So in this case, we have here on view, we wanna set up the same number. And we don't want 100%, we want to go 75% in this case. And all the rest should be fine as it is by default. So we're just gonna hit start to create the flipbook. And there you have, now we just created our first flipbook and we can review the timing using mplay. So I'm really happy with the end result. I like this kind of slow motion when we can really build the scale of the effect, like big rocks going into the earth, but I forgot to turn off the grid. So I want to close the flipbook, turn off the grid on the viewport, and then create the flipbook one more time. So here we have the final flipbook. I'm really happy with the end result of the animation. And we do have another option to create the flipbook. This could be done from within Karma and Solaris. It's going to take more time, but it's going to allow us to see the lighting. So if we double click on the LOMNet, going back to Solaris, we can see the lighting that we create in a previous video. And we can create a flipbook. We want to set the display flag on the material library to make sure that we are including the lights and the material. And let's double check that we select Karma XPU. And once we are here, we can go and click on the options for the flipbook. We have basically the same options, so let's check the camera ratio, make sure to match the one we have, and let's click start. And again, this is probably is gonna take a few minutes to get it done, but at the end of the process, it's gonna look better than the one we created before. So guys, this just finished creating. It took a few minutes to create the whole flipbook, but now we have the animation of the rocks going into the earth with the lighting and materials we create on Karma. So it's looking good. And next lesson, we're gonna be working on creating some camera effects. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys for watching, and if you find this useful and want to support, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.